Hello, everyone. You are listening to the Let's Live with Alexandria Fraser podcast, a podcast where we talk all things travel, fashion, beauty, sports, and all around lifestyles. Also, I do lots of interviews on people from all over the world. If you've been here before, thank you guys so much for coming back. And if you're new, welcome. I'm Alexandria Fraser, your host. And today we have a very special guest. We have another athlete, which I'm super excited about. So, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me on.
Of
Yeah,
course.
I'm Natalie Allport. I'm from Ottawa, Canada region. I used to be a former national team snowboarder. I guess I am a former national team snowboarder, turned CrossFit athlete. I grew up playing hockey, a bunch of sports. I'm sure we'll get into it. But yeah, it's kind of my short, quick notes on my sports right now.
Absolutely. So, let's first start off. How did you get into the sports world? How old were you? Sort of thing.
Yeah, it's funny because my dad will like show me videos of like the first day they brought me home from the hospital, and he's like, "Look, you're trying to do sit-ups and like you're doing like crunches." And I'm like, "Okay, sure." I think like in retrospect they say that, but I'm sure if I was like I became, I don't know, a doctor or something, maybe they would like, put into context what I was doing as a kid and to frame it in a different way. But yeah, my dad told me that he was like training me since I was a kid. I mean, my dad, he grew up in a small town where like sports were the main thing. So like he grew up playing football, hockey, baseball, softball, like all the sports. And so I'm the oldest child, so I kind of grew up the same. He was always just playing with me. I'm 3 years older than my brother, so I think he just kind of treated me the same way. And we would play hockey, we play mini sticks, we play every sport imaginable. And so yeah, I think I was pretty much just like birthed into it basically, and then started picking up more sports and things as I got into like club sports and school sports.
Awesome. Yeah, you said mini sticks, and like it's so funny. My brothers and I used to play that as well.
Oh my gosh. My brother and I would go through like, I don't know, cases of cereal a day playing mini sticks because we would play in the basement. I would come up, like pour a bowl of cereal, eat it like dry, like just as like, pure carb fuel, and then like go back down, play, and then go back up. And like, yeah, we would play nonstop. We'd have like silk pajamas so you could slide better. It was like, yeah, it was the thing.
That's so funny. That's adorable too. Like the memories, that is so cool. I love
Yeah.
that. So was your first sport, like official sport, hockey that you played?
Yeah, I would say so. I think like I also probably I played soccer a bit and a little bit of tennis like growing up. I think soccer is one that you start like very 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 young, but I think I was on skates like since I was could walk. And then same thing, I actually was on skis since I could walk because we lived in Vancouver, the West Coast, until I was like 5 or 6. So I kind of picked up a lot of the winter sports out there, and then took like a hiatus from everything and lived in the States for 2 years. And then when we came up here to Ottawa, that's when I joined a hockey team, and that became my first like really big sport. Played some soccer. I think I also played some soccer when we were in New Jersey, and some tennis, and then basically focused in on hockey until I found snowboarding.
Awesome. Okay, cool. And so yeah, we can dive into like the snowboarding world. That's is that your sport that you've had the most success in, would you say?
Yeah, for sure. I would think it's probably, I mean, a lot of people know me now from CrossFit and like the content I create now, but definitely snowboarding would be, the sport I've had the most success with. In my first year on the junior national team, I got ninth place at the junior world championship. So I guess I could say I was once ninth in the best, at least under 21. And I had the top Canadian women's result. So that was a result I was really proud of. And then I was competing, World Tour, World Cup events against, the people who've gone on or people who at the time were winning Olympic gold medals, X Games gold medals. So it was the sport that I made it to the top in. CrossFit is, it's a whole other journey, and I've came close, but not, the CrossFit Games level, which is like the Olympics of CrossFit. Haven't got there yet.
You know what? The future, there's going to be so many exciting things to hold. So don't even worry about that. That's incredible though. So for snowboarding, did you go to the trials and everything?
Yeah, so snowboarding was such an interesting journey because like when I was a kid, I told my parents like I want to go to the Olympics, and so hockey was everything, and hockey obviously has like a scholarship track, and then snowboarding is so different. It's like very counterculture, especially as someone who's like I love gym class, I love like the structure of training, I love like traditional sports. My parents were like, really, like you're going into snowboarding, especially like freestyle snowboarding. So I wasn't racing or anything, like I was doing all the jumps and the rails, and at the time it wasn't actually an Olympic sport yet. Like half pipe was, but like slopestyle wasn't yet. So they kind of were like, okay, she's going to be like a ski bum or something. And I'm like, no, like I want to be a pro snowboarder, whatever that means. Maybe it means like filming videos, going to X Games, or like hopefully I can get into the Olympics. And so it was actually the year, like when I graduated high school, I was like, okay, I'm going all in on snowboarding. I went out west for like a summer glacier camp, and they announced that it would be in the next Olympics. And all of a sudden a junior national team and a national team, like the whole national team program got formed overnight. I basically like got announced without them even emailing me. Like I had a friend who like messaged me or posted on my Facebook and was like, hey, did you see that you're on the junior national team? I was like, I have no idea. So I guess it was like in retrospect, my event results from the past year, but like I was competing in those events not knowing that like there was a ranking system or anything. And so yeah, all of a sudden got onto that, had to get a coach, had to like do all these things. All of a sudden I'm like competing at Junior Worlds. I was like snowboarding in my backyard the year before. And so, yeah, that was pretty crazy. And then, yeah, doing all the World Cup events, which is basically the trials for the Olympics. So the season before the Olympics, you're basically trying to open up spots for your country. I was injured. So I got injured at my first World Cup entry, sadly, and hurt my foot pretty badly that year. So we ended up opening only 2 spots. You can open a maximum of 4 spots. So we had 2 spots, one was locked in, and then we had basically like, I don't know, 5 of us fighting for that last spot. And so finally I was healed for the last 2 World Cups, but I would have really like had to win them to qualify. So I did my best, tried my best. One of my best friends ended up getting the spot, which was, cool to watch as well. But yeah, I failed to qualify for the 2014 Olympics, but it was pretty cool, like even to be nominated and like sign the team contract in case, because it's so last minute, like you get decided like a month before, so you have to prepare your visas and everything. You have to basically act like you're going if you just have a chance, which can be even more heartbreaking in the end, because you're like, I would go online and I could know like the layout of the gym in Sochi and be like, okay, that's where I'm going to train if I make it. And this is the logistics of sending food there. And like, you got to prepare as if you are going to go. And then when you don't go, you're like, this kind of hurts.
Yeah, absolutely. But I feel like, I don't know, you're like, seem like you're very open to like talk about it and everything. It seems like, I did listen to your TED talk about that stuff. So I know we can dive into it later, but I think it's super cool how you're positive through it all and you look at it as like an opportunity and everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think at the time I didn't address it. It was like I actually ended up like right after not qualifying, I ended up hurting my shoulder back in training. So I spent the 2 weeks of the Olympics on the couch watching, which was kind of ideal because if I was training, I wasn't going to be staying up all night watching, my friends compete. I probably still would have, but it wouldn't have been ideal for training. But because I couldn't be on the snow for 2 weeks, I was like getting to watch everything. But then it was like when I got, my arm out of the sling and everything, I was like, okay, back to snow, training for the next Olympics. But then it was like so much emotion, highs and lows that I never had addressed. So then I think it was like the next year that it really started to sink in and hit me. And that's ended up, a year later actually walking away from the sport, which I'm sure we can dive further into. But, try to stay positive through it out. But I think it's actually like in retrospect would have been smarter to maybe like deal with some of those emotions rather than like just pushing through and continuing on.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of shifting gears, now you're doing CrossFit. How did you sort of shift into that world? I know it's a really big now. Shifting over.
It's been growing. It's funny because I was definitely like one of those CrossFit haters before I started. So I definitely I appreciate when people are like hating on it because I know where that comes from. When I first started training, I had a very traditional strength and conditioning coach. She was a strength and conditioning coach for the university hockey team. There's just a certain way people program things. And then when I was injured, I actually started getting really passionate about fitness and training. So I actually took my personal training certification. I coached local ski and snowboard teams during my off season. So I had a company training other people. I got really, really knowledgeable and into that whole space, but it was still the very traditional, this is how you write a workout plan. Especially in the personal training space, a lot of programs are really just built kind of bodybuilding style. pretty basic. So, and a lot of those people have this like negative connotation of CrossFit because it was new. There's so many different movements. It's, you're obviously seeing a lot of movements that put joints through like a big range of motion versus like the very traditional static, movements that you see with like just bodybuilding or the traditional gym splits. So I was definitely like, oh, I don't know about this. There was actually one guy on my team who was like into it and he was really strong. He was doing these crazy Olympic lifts and I was like, this looks crazy. And so I was like getting kind of interested. And then this former pro skier that I know that lives in my city, she reached out and she was like, hey, like you seem to be like basically like doing CrossFit on your own, like you're getting really intense into gym and like doing these types of workouts, like do you want to come and like try it out? I think you'll like it. So I was like very reluctant, but then I ended up picking her up, going, and then I ended up like getting good at the workout. I ended up beating her in the workout and I was like, oh, I love this. This is like gym class. Like you get to beat other people, you're competing in like all these like in fitness. And so I kind of got hooked from there, but I still like really wanted to train specific for snowboarding. So I still continued just like my general sport specific training. And I would go there to the CrossFit gym just to learn Olympic lifting. Because I knew that like explosiveness with my hips would help with my jumping, my landings in snowboarding. So I did that for like during the season. And then it was actually like the off season before my last season snowboarding that one of the coaches, he reached out, he wanted to train me for free. And so I would come in and like he would train me, program some stuff. I would jump into workouts with him and his friends and they were very competitive. They've gone on, actually one of them, to compete at the CrossFit Games and stuff like that. So I was like doing workouts with them and they're like, wow, you're picking this up like really fast. Like you're learning things first try. You're already like, we have the strength to compete. Like you should like try to do this, like at least compete maybe in your off season from snowboarding. So I started making tons of friends. It was like a really cool community where I was so used to just seeing my snowboard friends in the winter and we're all like very similar people. But then in this space, it's like you're meeting doctors, you're meeting teachers, you're meeting grandmas, you're meeting like, it was such a cool community aspect. So I remember when I was like on my off season, I was like still trying to keep up with my CrossFit workout so I can message everyone back home like, oh, I got this score on this workout after my training. And so then when I ended up leaving snowboarding, I was like, I still want to be an athlete. I still want to compete. You know, I still think I have like the potential to do something in a different sport. So I basically like transitioned over and just instead of spending all day on the hill, I spent all day at the gym.
Super cool. Very, very, very interesting because, I mean, I watch your like content and I think it's super difficult. It looks like it, but I feel like you have to have years of practice to do it. But it's so interesting how like you kind of came into it just for another sport and now you fell in love with it and you're here doing that.
Yeah. It definitely takes years to perfect things. It's funny because I like went into it and like, you know, had CrossFit Games athletes who were like, you could go to the games next year, like you're really good. And it was because I had the strength and like the body awareness as an athlete, especially having done a lot like with my snowboarding in the air and trampoline, like the air awareness, you really have to know like where your body is in space. So I picked things up very quickly, but to actually master things, that's a whole other level. So there's so many people that come into the sport and they're like, they have the same mentality. They're like, oh, I'm really good, I can go. And then you get really humbled very quickly because it just takes so long. Like I've worked with, you know, top Olympic lifting coaches just on little technique things because I know I have the strength to lift more, but it's like those little technique of like the bar is like a centimeter off your body that affects so much. And in CrossFit, there's gymnastics, there's the cardio side, there's the Olympic lifting side. There's so many little things and you have to like coaches for each one and improve each thing. And it just takes years and years. And of course the sport progresses and progresses as well. And so to even keep up with that curve is just, it's insane. Like the level of people who are like 18 now, there's 18-year-olds who have done CrossFit for longer than I have. And they're like, it just insane. Like at 18, I was not lifting anywhere near what they're lifting. So it's really incredible to see, you know, the future of the sport too.
Absolutely. I love how it keeps growing because my aunt started a few years ago and when she first started, I was like, what is that? You know, and then now I'm like, oh my gosh, I see all these different people and follow a bunch on social media. I think it's incredible.
Yeah,
Well,
starting to like gain kind of like mainstream popularity. Like there's like some rap songs and they're like, they say CrossFit in it and I'm like, oh, cool. Like it's getting cool, you know? I feel like I went from snowboarding, which was like a pretty, like I think it was kind of a cool sport to especially freestyle snowboarding and then like into like CrossFit and everyone hated on it and I was like, oh no. And so now it's becoming cool.
no, definitely. I think like the woman that I see in CrossFit, I'm like, that's my like dream. Like it is so cool how you have to be so tough. And we'll get into it more too. I have a few like mindset questions, but yeah, I think you have to be so like mentally strong and physically just tough to put your body through all those things. So I definitely give you major kudos for doing that.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it is. It's very like the sport is pretty equal. Like prize money has always been equal among men and women. That was a really cool change that I saw when I left snowboarding too. I think snowboarding is getting better at it, but there were just such disparities. Of course, we know that across all sports, but CrossFit is one of those sports that's truly like equal. In fact, I think like the women have more endorsement deals. The women have they have like more popularity on social media, and I think also like there's cool because there's the team aspect where it's 2 men and 2 women. It's like unisex teams that you compete on as well, and so to see that at like a really high level, like you see unisex teams maybe in intramural sports, but to see that at like the top level, like at the CrossFit Games, is so cool. So it's very unique in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I was also going to ask that too. What did you see a shift from when you like men versus women's sports and snowboarding versus CrossFit?
Yeah, like in CrossFit, I mean, it was funny because like the first time I walked into the gym, it was like, wow, like people like really respected like the strong women, right? And like all the comments that I got about, oh, my arms are big or like my legs are really big from snowboarding or whatever, it's like that is really respected in that gym space, like in that culture, and people are like looking up to the strong women in the gym, and you have like young kids who are coming and doing classes and looking up to the women, and I just thought that was so cool. In snowboarding, like even I would be riding with some of my like guy friends, and they would make snarky comments like, if I had long hair I could win X Games or this and this, and I was like, and they're like, no one's watching the women's competition, we're just here to watch the men's. And every competition I went to, the prize money was less. Like I remember winning competitions and getting, okay, here's $500, and the guys are getting $2,000, and like that's of course a small competition, so the disparity is even bigger at the bigger ones where maybe they're getting $50,000 compared to the women are getting $10,000. And so it was just so upsetting, like, and that was so normalized, like over the years you're just so used to it. You're like, okay, yeah, like cool, I'm gonna go to this competition and get this. Or like a local little competition, they're not gonna give prize money for the girls, they're gonna like, here's some gloves and the guys get cash. And I really like that was just, it's discouraging that it actually becomes just normal and you just accept it. Yeah. And so to see that change and be somewhere else, I think that's really empowered me to like speak up about the experiences I had in other sports growing up. Because I think it doesn't have to be this way, especially seeing like in this community, it isn't this way. Why isn't it this way in other sports?
Absolutely. And I think you said it best. It's very discouraging, like when you're going to do your best and your performance, it's going to earn you a prize, but it's not going to be ever equal to your...
Yeah, like I'm putting my life on the line. I've broken my ribs, my tailbone, like I've gotten like every injury, and just the same as the guys, right? Like are hitting the same jumps, the same rails, and then to, have the different prize money on, just unfortunate.
Yeah, that's not fun, but definitely I'm super happy that you're in CrossFit, and it's like you said, it sounds very equal, which I absolutely love, and I think that's a huge step, even in all sports all around for the future for women's sports.
Yeah, and I think especially like seeing, I mean, like you said, like you follow some of the athletes, and I see a lot of other female athletes and like a lot of other people just following some of the top CrossFit athletes because, it just gives such representation of like strong, muscular women. And I think that is changing the culture in other sports as well, where you just having that top representation that's not necessarily just like about like what you look like, but it's like about being strong and like motivating and inspiring. And so I think it's really cool too. Like I know when I started, I bought like a poster of one of the top, CrossFit athletes, and I had it like on my wall, and people would walk in and be like, why do you have this like super jacked person on your wall? And I was like, oh, this is like the top athlete. Like she has a crazy story. Like she, like her first year made it to the games and then got the one and then this, and like, it just, it's really cool to see that they're gaining so much more popularity. And because I think it's just important in general to like have representation of like strong, muscular women.
Absolutely. What would you say sort of is like your typical day now that you're training and everything? And also I was like wondering about like your food and stuff, because, so funny story, I this week just joined the club hockey team at my school because I've always wanted to play, and I play club rugby here, which I love, but it's our off season right now, so it's like a once a week thing for club hockey. So I was like, okay, I always wanted to learn, so I'm going to do it. So I was like wondering too, like what are like your typical day, your food, your schedule sort of thing, if you want to share that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, today's not a good representation. Well, it is, I guess. I took the day off. My back has been bugging me for the last 2 days. Yesterday, I tried to kind of push through it a bit. I was like running and I was like, I can't even run normally. Every step is like hurting my back. And so this morning I woke up and like rolled over and I was like, oh, it is not better. So I took the day off and I went to like a coffee shop and, got like some not treats. I got like some scones and croissants and I went to a coffee shop yesterday and got a croissant too, but I just love, I love stopping at the coffee shop and getting pastries anyhow, and chilled there for a while, but trying to eat a lot today on my rest day because I know it's going to help like my back recover and everything too. But on a typical like training day, I suppose like I wake up not super, super early. This actually used to be a debate I used to have with a coach that I used to work with in CrossFit. I'd be like, everyone's waking up at, on social media at 4 a.m., 5 a.m., like super early. Like, should I do that? And he's like, well, you have a flexible schedule. You don't have to. Like, I would prefer that you, like, if you feel better sleeping in, you get way more, you can get 9 hours of sleep. That's better than forcing yourself to wake up early because you see on social media all these people waking up early. So that was a big thing that hit me. So like, I do like to try to wake up a little bit earlier. But honestly, like some days it's just like, like 7 a.m., 7:30. I don't get up too early. And then basically the first thing I do is go outside with my dog. I try to get like some natural light. I think it's really good for like, just like our hormones to get outside, see some natural sunlight and also just like some fresh air. And then I'll make breakfast. I don't like to like wait too long to make breakfast. I know some people like, they can't eat right when they wake up, but I'm like, no, I'm hungry, like I'm starving. So yeah, drink a bunch of water and make breakfast, a big breakfast. And then usually I'll train probably like 2 hours after I eat. Like I like to train like mid-morning time because I feel like I've digested my food. Like my training partner will be eating when I get to his house to train. And I'm like, I don't understand how you do this. Like I need to like digest my food. So usually I'll eat something, and then if I do have training a little bit longer, then I'll eat like a second breakfast or like a snack before training if it's been just like a little bit more time. And in that time I'll just do like some laptop work or something. And then train. Some days it's like 2 sessions of a few hours. Other days it's maybe like just one longer session. It kind of depends. My schedule is really flexible, but where I train is at my friend's house, and he's like, sometimes he trains like classes out of there and different things. So it's basically whatever his schedule is. So there's days when I like drive back and forth 3 times. So I'm like, okay, we got to train 2 hours here. Then I go home and eat something. Then I come back for an hour, then go back, and then go back for 2 hours. And so it just really depends on the day. But then eat a lot of food after training or between training sessions for sure. Usually I try, especially between training sessions, something that's fast to digest, so not too much fiber. So like maybe like skip the vegetables. Then I don't really like vegetables that much anyways, but like get like a protein shake or a smoothie, and then like a lot of carbs, but like quick digesting carbs because I'm going to go train again. And then train. And then the afternoons, eat again, of course. And then just like kind of focus on recovery. So like stretch, mobility, just relaxing, but also like if I'm relaxing, I'm usually working on my laptop, maybe editing videos or, my podcast or different things like that. So laptop time is like when I'm done training, it's like, okay, chill on the couch, but with my laptop at the same time. And then, big dinner, try to go to bed not too late so I can get like at least 8 hours of sleep. And that's pretty much the day. But yeah, just try to eat. I honestly, I just try to eat as much as I can, especially when I'm training a lot. When I was doing a lot of the running, because I did the marathon, I guess a couple months ago, I had to eat so much. And even still, like I never weigh myself, but my dad was like, hey, you should like just see after the marathon. And I definitely lost some weight. And like, so I actually was like really sad because someone mentioned it to me the other day, like this older lady. She's like, I haven't seen you in a while and you've like lost a lot of weight. I'm like, oh, like I was sad because like I work so hard for the muscle that I, put on in my sport and to be strong. And I relate it back, not with like how I look or like, weighing less, but more so like I just know that it's affected my performance as I got back into CrossFit. My lifts have decreased since all the running. My upper body strength, especially your upper body just doesn't want to hold that when it's doing all this running, right? It wants to adapt to the activity it's doing most. So now I'm just trying to eat like all the food to get that muscle back for sure, because I need it with the CrossFit season coming up. There's a lot of handstand push-ups that'll happen, a lot of, upper body stuff, and I need that muscle mass back.
Absolutely. That's awesome. I love that you said that though, because growing up, I would say like I did a little bit in college too of running, and then I like stopped. And the goal was always to get thinner, 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 thinner. And
Right.
now I'm in contact sports. And now my goal is to like get stronger, and I love it. It's like helped me so much, and I really look up to people who promote like getting strong and having that aesthetic, because it helps me feel just much better about it. Because my whole life I'm just trained one certain way, and now I'm like shifting my mindset.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I feel like I felt the same way. Even when I started snowboarding, like I knew I needed strong legs and to be strong, but at the same time, everything I saw, even from doing the personal training certification to like what I would look up online, like how do I train for my sport, it was always like weight loss and like looking a certain way. It was like, oh, this is how you should look if you're an athlete. And I was like, that person is a fitness model. They're not like competing in any sport. And like, there's no one way to look as an athlete, right? Like there's going to be, even in the sport of rugby or hockey or snowboarding, everyone's going to look totally different. So that was, yeah, it was a big shift. And I think CrossFit really helped me with that. But even at the same time, when I first joined CrossFit, there was still this negative mindset as well of like people thinking that you needed to be a certain percentage of body fat to compete. There was a coach who was saying like, okay, I've analyzed my athletes and they're all at this level. So then it caused a lot of like a ripple effect of a lot of other athletes thinking, okay, to be the best, I need to be at this body fat percentage. And it's like, no, you need to like train the way they are maybe, or train the best way for you actually, because I could train the same way they do and I might not respond actually the same way. So like having my own individual coach, knowing how my body best responds to training, how it adapts to gain the most amount of strength and endurance and all these things. And now we're seeing more representation. I think like things have like switched a little bit, which is better. There's better nutrition coaches in the sport who are more promoting not looking a certain way, not having like check-in photos and things like that, more just like performance. So it's interesting how things change even within the sport. And so I'm glad that mindset's switching over, that there's a representation even at the top level of the CrossFit Games of different body types, which is important. But yeah, I think it's so important because I still hear all the time of athletes who even their parents are telling them like, don't train too much for your sport because you might get really bulky and it'll slow you down. It's like, no. Like I used to get told in CrossFit, if I lost weight, I would be better at handstand push-ups because I'd be lighter, right? So there's like less mass to move. I'm like, what if I just get stronger? Like if my shoulders are stronger, my body is stronger, that's actually going to help me much more than just getting lighter. Because if I got lighter, maybe my lower body lifts are going to go down. My power is going to go down. It just doesn't make any sense. So yeah, trying to shift that narrative. Like even when I'm training with, younger girls than me in the gym and stuff like that, if I hear like comments like that, I try to like normalize, like if it's someone's like, hey, what's your favorite treat? I'm like, no, it's not like a cheat meal. It's not a treat. Like I just eat this every day. Like it's just good after training. Like let's go get a croissant. Let's go eat this or do that. Right. So yeah, trying to change those little comments and that culture, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I think little by little you can, make that happen, make it more normal.
Yeah.
What would you say is your like biggest mindset tip to sort of fuel your workouts? Because, and like I know motivation and discipline, they're like two different things, but is there anything that really just gets you out of bed every morning, especially in those days when you're like, all I want to do is sit in my bed all day and not move and not talk to anyone?
Yeah, I think I have a lot of days like that, especially when you have two training sessions. Like it's always like maybe you're motivated for the first one, but like when you've already like been through it, it's hard, right? Like the hardest part is getting started. So you've already started and you've already like finished in a sense. So then to like get started again when you're already feeling like tired, fatigued, brain foggy from the first one, that's really difficult. And so for me, it's, one thing is having accountability. That's been a big change in my training over the last couple years. Rather than just like always doing my own thing with my individual coach, I train with a training partner. So there's so many times, like this Monday, for example, we were training together and we really didn't want to do this workout. It was super hard, but because we're doing it together, we were pushing, we were challenging each other. We got the best, out of each other from doing that together. And then at the end, we had these assault bike sprints and we did not want to do it. He's like, so do you want to like do the bike workout? And I was like, well, do I want to, or should we? Those are two different questions. And I was like, do we have the time? He's like, yeah, we have the time. And I was like, then I guess we should. And so it's like, okay, so like, having that accountability on the days where like maybe he's like questioning if he wants to do it. And I'm like, all right, we got to do it. And then vice versa. I think that really helps. But also like having little, I think like tips, like even like putting things on quotes on your walls. I'm in the middle of a workout and I'm thinking, okay, the best way out is through, not, slowing down is just going to make me take longer. I got to like pick up the bar, keep moving, keep going. having a strategy like to deal with those thoughts when they come up, I think is important. Also understanding like everyone goes through those thoughts. So like if you're having that thought, you're sitting in bed, if you think like, okay, I'm having this thought because it means like I should just not train. Well, then you're probably not going to train any day because you're going to have that thought all the time, right? Like even this morning I was like, oh, like do I want to roll out of bed right now because my back hurts, and even just like getting out of bed hurts, but I was like, no, I got to get out of bed because like I have some laptop work to do. I want to go eat breakfast, get moving and doing stuff. So I think if you can have those, you just know that it's like normal to have those thoughts, and just like because it's hard, you're gonna have those thoughts. So knowing that you're gonna have to like combat them in a way, I think that's important. But also knowing, that some days you probably should just like stay in bed and chill and rest and recover. But it's hard to differentiate those things, and I think it just takes practice to learn what days are which and which days you gotta like push through and keep going.
Absolutely. I love that you said that too. And I love that you normalize that, athletes like yourself who are very successful even have the days where they're like, oh, I just want to lay in bed, don't move, like nothing like that. 'Cause I think that's really hard for me to understand sometimes, because if I'm not having motivation or anything, I'm just like, well, like this is not very like good of me. But I love that you said that. So thank you.
Yeah, I think all hard things don't get easier, like,
Yeah.
whatever level that you're at, it's going to be difficult. It's like, we're all going to have those thoughts, like the negative thoughts that are like, okay, I don't want to do this today, or vice versa. So I think, yeah, normalizing that everyone has that thought, those thoughts are important. Cause I was the same way. Like when I first started, I was like, how come like I just don't want to train today, or I don't want to go out in the cold on my snowboard, even though like I love snowboarding, it's just too cold and this. And so then like I just realized how important it would have been if I had seen like other people saying like, oh, I feel the same, rather than only seeing like, oh, everybody's out there and just like, snowboarding or in the gym, they don't feel that way, they just like go do it. But it's like, no, they're having the same thoughts, but they're like, working through it the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And also I wanted to touch on, you have your own podcast, if you want to sort of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, the All In podcast. Yeah, it's been really fun, like just having conversations with different people. I'm sure like with your podcast, it's a really fun way to like have good conversations, learn different things. Like I feel like I'm learning something new every time I'm like on the podcast, and then I just get to like share it with other people as well. Especially during the pandemic, I think when like we couldn't really see people in person, it was like a really cool way to like network and like just have these deep conversations that maybe you couldn't when you were like home alone during isolation. So so it's been a really cool experience, and like talking with different athletes, and especially like myself with like my story of like identity in sports and mental health and different things, realizing that I wasn't alone in any of those things has been really, really gratifying. Same thing with like, learning that like I'm not the only one who isn't motivated every single day. I hear that from everyone, all these athletes who come on, whether they're like NHL champions, Olympic champions, like they've all gone through the same thing. So normalizing some of those topics has been a really cool experience.
Absolutely. And on your TED Talk that you did, you were talking about mental health, and how do you now, sort of like looking back and even from your experience like up to date, what is like your biggest mental health tip to keep yourself healthy, because that's like the most important step to have a successful day.
Yeah, being proactive. So like I know when I'm like, oh no, like I'm good, I can push through like I don't need to like journal. I don't need to, do some of the things that I know can like help me. I don't need to like get that fresh air this morning. Like I can just like jump onto my laptop, onto my phone. Like I can skip those things. I'm really busy. Well, I just have had so much experience where that catches up to me, where it's like, okay, now I'm experiencing burnout because I didn't listen to these little signs, or now my like anxiety is getting worse and getting triggered more because I haven't been like keeping up with doing some of my breath work or like different things that I know can help. Or it's like, oh no, like it's fine. Like I can postpone that therapy appointment or this. So it's like being proactive when things are good, so that things can like stay good for longer. That's been like what I've really realized, because some of those things, they really help, and you might not notice them when they are like helping, but when you stop doing them, you really do notice. So staying proactive and like trying to incorporate at least like one kind of self-care activity into my day has been really important.
Awesome. Super cool. Thank you so much. I also wanted to ask if you wanted to like tell everyone your socials.
Yeah, at Natalie Allport on like all the channels, all the platforms. That's where you can find me.
I'll also link everything below so people can see that. But I really
Cool.
appreciate you coming on. This was such an awesome conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course.